I sat there silent, my linen napkin still folded neatly on my lap as the check landed in front of me. The candle between us flickered like it knew what was coming. "She's penniless," my daughter laughed, swirling her wine like it was a punchline. The waiter didn't laugh. Neither did I. After raising her alone, after giving up my name, my savings, my spine, I was reduced to a joke she told between courses. "Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe." The lights in the restaurant were dim and golden, bouncing off crystal glassware and white tablecloths, like the glow of a stage. Soft string music played beneath the quiet murmur of conversation. Elaine had chosen the spot, Trattoria Amore, tucked away in a narrow Beacon Hill alley, for its discretion and its tiramisu. Now she wished she hadn't. "Seriously," Sophie said, voice rising over the clink of silverware. "She's penniless." The table went still. It wasn't just the four of them who heard it. Two couples at neighboring tables turned their heads. A server paused mid-step, wine bottle suspended in midair. Somewhere across the room, a spoon dropped. Mark looked down quickly, pretending to study the edge of his linen napkin. His lips twitched. Elaine didn't say a word. She didn't need to. She simply lowered her fork, slow, deliberate, and placed it against the rim of her plate. Her linguine, carefully twirled moments before, unraveled slightly in the sauce. Sophie, unbothered, reached for her wine. "I mean, Mom lives off coupons and senior bus passes," she said, laughing again. "Every time I visit her townhouse, it's like walking into a time capsule from 1993. Across the table, Joyce stiffened. Her fingers, floured and calloused from decades of bakery work, clenched around the stem of her water glass. Elaine's voice was quiet. "That townhouse is paid off." "Exactly," Sophie said, grinning, "which makes it the most valuable thing you've got. No offense." Mark made a small sound, a throat clearing that could have been disapproval or amusement. It was impossible to tell with him. Elaine reached for her cloth napkin and dabbed her lips gently, then folded it and placed it neatly beside her plate. Joyce leaned forward. "You're enjoying yourself a little too much, Sophie." Sophie waved her off. "Come on, Joyce. It's a joke." "It's not funny," Joyce snapped. Elaine gave her friend a look, not a warning, but a quiet request for restraint. She didn't want a scene. Not here. Not yet. The waiter approached just as Sophie was swirling the last of her wine. He was tall, young, and sharply dressed in black. His expression was neutral, but his eyes, keen. "Will there be anything else this evening?" he asked. Sophie flicked her hand lazily. "Just the check." "She's paying," she added with a smirk, gesturing at Elaine. "Unless pennies aren't accepted?" The waiter nodded and walked away without a word. Elaine didn't move. She just sat, spine straight, eyes focused on the flickering candle between them. "You know," Sophie went on, tapping her nails against her glass, "you really should think about downsizing. That place must be a lot for one person. Maybe let us help you manage it. Transition it properly, before it becomes a hassle." Elaine said nothing. She didn't have to. The waiter returned, this time holding a small black leather folio. With precision, he bent slightly and placed it directly in front of Sophie. Sophie blinked. "Oh. No. This goes to her," she said, pointing again. "I'm sorry," the waiter said smoothly. "Per the reservation, the bill is listed under Ms. Sophie Porter. It's already been added to your name." Mark choked on his sip of water. Joyce sat back in her chair with visible satisfaction, her lips pressed into something dangerously close to a smile. Elaine reached for her tea, lifted it with steady hands, and took a slow, quiet sip. Sophie fumbled with the check, flipping it open. Her smirk vanished. This can't be right, she muttered. This was supposed to be. We were just. Elaine set down her cup and finally spoke. I didn't ask for this dinner. Sophie looked up. Her eyes darted between faces, no one meeting her gaze. I thought we were celebrating, she said. For what? Joyce asked. Your talent for embarrassing your mother in public? I was joking. Elaine's eyes were calm, cool, level. So was the waiter. A heavy pause stretched over the table. Sophie slapped her card onto the bill without another word. The waiter took it with a polite nod and disappeared. Across the room, conversation slowly resumed, but the weight of the moment lingered. As the table sat in silence, the candles burned a little lower. The plates, half cleared, cooled beneath the white linen. The Beacon Hill townhouse was silent when Elaine stepped inside, the heavy oak door clicking shut behind her. Outside, the narrow street still glistened from an early evening drizzle. Cobblestones glimmered under the street lamps like a wet mosaic. Inside, only the faint hum of the refrigerator and the smell of lavender polish from the entryway console filled the air. She slipped off her coat, hung it neatly, and stood still for a moment. The restaurant's candlelight had left a faint echo in her eyes. Sophie's laughter still clanged inside her skull like loose change in a tin. She moved deliberately through the front hall to her study, a room lined with sturdy bookshelves, a roll-top desk, and a small iron safe tucked beneath the window seat. The safe had been there since Harold died, hidden behind a false panel she'd installed herself. Elaine knelt on the worn Persian rug, pulling her keys from her handbag. The tiny brass one, the one she hadn't used in months, felt colder than the others. It slid into the lock with a soft metallic snick. She turned it slowly. The door swung open. Inside lay her life in paper form. Meticulously labeled binders, manila envelopes, a few velvet pouches of keepsakes. Everything catalogued, everything orderly, or so she'd believed. She reached for the thick navy binder marked Will and Estate and placed it on her desk. Its spine creaked as she opened it. The first page greeted her with her own handwriting from years ago, neat, slanted accountant's script. Revised after Harold's passing. She turned another page, and there it was. Sophie's name, still listed in black ink as primary beneficiary. The townhouse, the savings accounts, the small investment portfolio she'd built quietly over decades of ledgers and side jobs. All of it pointed to Sophie, as if the last 5 years of insults and entitlement had never happened. Elaine's fingers trembled. She smoothed the page flat, as if she could iron out her own oversight. Her old notes filled the margins, reminders to review annually and consider contingencies. She hadn't. She stared at the neat columns of numbers, the witness signatures, the notary seal that had seemed so permanent at the time. For a moment the room blurred. Not with tears. She wouldn't give that to Sophie. But with a kind of stunned clarity, like a banker discovering an error years too late. She closed the binder slowly and pressed her palms against it, feeling the weight of a decision that had been waiting for her to notice. In the hallway, the grandfather clock ticked toward 11. Elaine inhaled, exhaled, and reached for the rotary phone on her desk. She preferred it to the cordless. Its heaviness steadied her. She dialed a number from memory. It rang once, twice. A low voice answered. Harvey Klein. It's Elaine, she said. He didn't sound surprised. I wondered when you'd call. I need to see you, she said. Soon. Tomorrow morning? Yes. Bring everything. We'll clean it up. She hung up the phone carefully, the receiver's click echoing in the quiet room. Then she placed the binder back into the safe, but left the door open this time, as if closing it would mean forgetting again. She stood, smoothed her skirt, and walked to the window. Down on the street, a lone figure passed under the street lamp, hood up. Steps slow. For a moment she thought it looked like Mark, or maybe Daniel, or maybe just a shadow. The figure paused, looked up, then moved on. Elaine drew the curtains closed. The smell of yeast and cinnamon hit Elaine the moment she stepped through the bakery's glass door. Joyce's place, Adams and Crumb, was always warm. A small universe of sugar, butter, and conversation wedged between two brick brownstones on Charles Street. The bell above the door chimed, and a gust of flower-scented air wrapped around her like an apron. Joyce was behind the counter, kneading a mound of dough with brisk, practiced motions. Her sleeves were rolled up to her elbows. Her hair, usually neat, was pinned haphazardly with a pencil. She glanced up when she saw Elaine and wiped her hands on her flour-dusted apron. "You look like someone who needs coffee," Joyce said. Elaine managed a faint smile. "Black, extra hot." "Sit." Joyce pointed to the corner table by the window, the one that always caught the first sunlight. "I'll bring it." Elaine slid into the chair, resting her handbag on the seat beside her. Outside, cobblestone streets bustled with late-morning foot traffic, tourists, students, delivery trucks fighting for curb space. Inside, the radio played old jazz softly, a counterpoint to the rhythmic thump of dough on wood. Joyce arrived with a steaming mug and a croissant. "On the house," she said, sliding them across. "Now tell me." Elaine wrapped her hands around the mug, letting the heat soak into her fingers. "We had dinner last night. Sophie, Mark, me, and you know who she thinks she's become." Joyce's brows rose. "And?" She laughed, Elaine said flatly. "Loud. Called me penniless in front of a room full of strangers." Joyce stopped mid-reach for the sugar bowl. "She did what?" Elaine recounted it. The golden light, the candles, the smirks, the check handed to Sophie. Not embellishing, not softening, just laying the facts out like she would on a ledger. By the time she finished, the steam from her coffee had thinned into faint wisps. Joyce slammed her flour-coated palms on the counter with a sharp crack. The sound startled a customer near the register, who dropped a biscotti back into the jar. "Cut her off," Joyce said. "Do it now. She's using your patience like a checking account, and you're about to go overdrawn." Elaine sipped her coffee slowly, eyes steady. "I'm already taking steps." "That girl has mistaken your grace for weakness." Joyce's voice softened but stayed edged. "You don't owe her a penny, Elaine. Not one." "I know," Elaine said, "and I'm not going to." Joyce crouched slightly, resting her floury knuckles on the table. "You're serious this time." Elaine met her friend's gaze. "I called Harvey last night." That landed like a gavel between them. Joyce straightened, her face breaking into a small, fierce smile. "Good." Elaine tore a corner from the croissant but didn't eat it. She stared at the flaky crumbs, lost for a moment in the quiet hum of the bakery. Her phone buzzed against her handbag. She glanced at the screen. A text from Sophie. "Hope you didn't mind the joke last night, Mom. You know I love you." Elaine's thumb hovered over the keyboard. 3 dots appeared as if she'd start a reply. Then she tapped the screen dark. No reply. Across the table, Joyce had seen the exchange. "Let me guess." Elaine slid the phone back into her bag. "I'm done guessing." The bakery door chimed again as a new customer entered, a young woman carrying a sleeping toddler. The smell of sugar rose around them, soft and sweet. But Elaine felt something settle inside her. Not sugar, not bitterness. Something heavier. Resolve. Joyce poured herself a small coffee and raised it like a toast. "To new chapters," she said. Elaine didn't raise hers, but she nodded once. The elevator in the Back Bay office building hummed quietly as it ascended. Elaine watched the floors tick upward in the brass-framed panel above the door. 3, 4, 5. Her gloved hands resting atop her handbag like she was holding something precious and breakable. When the doors slid open, Harvey Klein's name was etched into a glass panel to her left. Crisp serif font in black vinyl. Klein and Burroughs. Estate and Trust Law. The receptionist greeted her by name. "He's expecting you, Ms. Porter." Elaine walked past the leather chairs and minimalist decor into the inner office, where Harvey stood in front of a wall of bookshelves, sleeves rolled, glasses perched low on his nose. The same Harvey she'd trusted with her affairs after Harold passed. Loyal, sharp, and always 2 steps ahead. "Elaine." He gestured toward the seat across from his desk. "Have a seat. You brought the original?" She nodded and opened her bag, removing the navy binder. Edges softened with age. She passed it across the desk without a word. Harvey placed it in front of him, opened it, and began reading. He made no small talk, just the low rustle of pages turning, the scratch of a pen noting small things in the margin. After a few minutes, he looked up. "Sophie's still listed as sole beneficiary. Everything." "I know," Elaine said. Her voice was steady, but her hands stayed clasped in her lap. "No codicils, no contingencies. This version is clean." "It's outdated," Elaine replied. "So is the expectation behind it." Harvey nodded slowly, leaning back in his chair. "I take it there was an event." "There was," she said. "But this isn't about that one dinner. It's about every moment that made me feel like a burden instead of a mother." Harvey didn't press her further. He simply reached for a blank will packet, slid it in front of her, and clicked his pen. "Let's begin." Elaine reviewed every line, not because she didn't trust him, but because trust didn't mean speed. It meant clarity, precision. She listed her estate, the townhouse, the accounts, the modest investments. No debts, no co-owners, no apologies. When he reached the part about beneficiaries, Harvey looked up. "Would you like to name anyone else? Or should I write in the full transfer to the Grace Haven Women's Shelter, like we discussed before?" Elaine took a moment before answering. "All of it to Grace Haven. No partials? No fallback clauses?" "Understood." By the time he'd drafted the new will, the light outside had shifted. Late morning sun casting long shadows across the rug. He slid the final pages toward her. "You're sure?" "I'm certain." She took the pen, signed her name in careful cursive, then underlined it with a final, practiced flourish, not as habit, as statement. "I'll notarize it now," Harvey said, standing. "We'll need Marion for the official clerk seal. I already asked her to be available." They stepped into the adjoining hall and took the elevator down to the county clerk's annex office. Inside, behind a frosted glass window, sat Marion Lee. Efficient, iron-spined, and always 5 minutes ahead of any deadline. "Elaine," she said, standing from her desk with a warm smile. "Been a while." Elaine returned the smile. "Too long." Harvey passed the documents across the counter. "We need this recorded today." Marion scanned the signature page, flipped to the cover, then back again. "All in order," she murmured. "Just give me a minute." She disappeared into a back room and returned with a thick black stamp in hand. With a practiced motion, she pressed it down onto the signature page. Thwack. The ink gleamed. Crisp, permanent, irrevocable. "Congratulations," Marion said. "It's official. You've just rewritten your future." Elaine exhaled. Not in relief. In release. Harvey folded the will into a fireproof sleeve and handed it to her. "Want me to deliver copies to Grace Haven personally?" Elaine nodded. "Yes. They deserve to see it in writing." They parted at the curb. Harvey went back inside. Marion waved through the glass. Elaine turned toward the bustle of Boylston Street, the folder tucked tight beneath her arm. The invitation came by text. "Lunch Friday?" "My treat." Elaine knew better. But she agreed anyway. Trattoria Amore, again. This time, during daylight, the place was quieter. Sunlight spilled through the high front windows, casting latticed shadows across crisp white tablecloths. The staff recognized her but didn't mention the last time she'd been there. Their silence was its own courtesy. Sophie arrived 10 minutes late, draped in a camel coat and oversized sunglasses, even indoors. Her heels clicked across the tiled floor like punctuation marks. "Mother," she said breezily, kissing the air beside Elaine's cheek. "You look comfortable." Elaine folded her napkin across her lap. "You look expensive." Sophie laughed, sliding into the seat across from her. "Oh, you know me. Treat yourself, right?" Without glancing at the menu, she flagged the waiter and ordered the lobster risotto, the antipasti platter, 2 glasses of Pinot Grigio. "The bottle, actually," she added, handing back the wine list with a wink. Elaine kept her expression unreadable. "Don't look so grim," Sophie said. "We're celebrating." Elaine lifted a brow. "Are we?" "Well, sure." Sophie leaned back in her chair, unfolding the linen napkin as if she'd earned a moment of pageantry. "It's not every day I get to wine and dine my future inheritance." Elaine tilted her head. "Excuse me?" "Oh, come on," Sophie said, laughing. "The townhouse, the accounts? Eventually, it all lands in my lap. Don't worry, I'll keep the wallpaper. For nostalgia." Elaine took a slow sip of water. "How generous." "Besides," Sophie went on, picking up a slice of prosciutto with her fork, "you always told me to plan ahead. I'm planning." When the entrees arrived, Sophie barely paused. She dug into her risotto as if the food, and the moment, were hers by right. The conversation drifted, mostly Sophie talking, Elaine listening with the polite detachment of someone who'd already stopped taking notes. Then came the joke. As the plates were cleared and the wine bottle emptied, Sophie leaned forward, grinning. "Tell you what," she said, placing her hand theatrically over Elaine's. "Since you've been saving your pennies all these years, maybe I'll let you cover dessert. It'll be symbolic. Legacy money." Elaine smiled faintly, the same smile she used to wear during tax audits when clients cracked jokes about offshore accounts. The waiter arrived with the check in a leather folio. Without a word, he placed it directly in front of Sophie. She blinked. "Oh, no, no. This is hers," she said, nodding toward Elaine. "She's the one with the—" The waiter cut in, polite but firm. "The reservation was booked under Ms. Sophie Porter. Per restaurant policy, the bill is charged accordingly." Sophie's face tightened. "But I thought—" Elaine reached for her teacup and took a sip. "You said it was your treat." Sophie glanced at the folio and flipped it open. Her shoulders stiffened. "This can't be right." "It's quite right," Elaine said calmly. "They confirmed when I arrived." Sophie fumbled for her card, cheeks blooming red. "You could have said something. I thought I'd let you plan ahead." Mark wasn't there this time. No buffer, no excuse. Just Sophie, trapped in the same performance she'd orchestrated, now with the spotlight turned directly on her. The waiter took the card and returned moments later with the receipt. Sophie signed in silence. Elaine stood, adjusting the strap of her handbag. "Thank you for lunch." Sophie didn't respond. Outside, the sun warmed the stone steps as Elaine descended slowly, her heels clicking just as sharply as Sophie's had. Behind her, she heard the waiter politely ask Sophie if she'd like her itemized receipt. Elaine smiled, small and private. Late Saturday morning, the light poured into the kitchen windows like a blessing. Elaine stood by the stove, apron on, wooden spoon in hand, stirring a pot of tomato basil soup. Her townhouse was warm and quiet, exactly the way she liked it. Floorboards polished to a soft shine, bookshelf dusted, mail sorted, counters clean. She didn't need much. That had always been her gift, knowing what was enough. From the front hall came a knock. 3 sharp raps, followed by the familiar creak of the old brass mail slot. Joyce. Elaine wiped her hands on a dish towel and opened the door. There she was, cheeks pink from the wind, a paper bag tucked under one arm. "I brought bread," Joyce said, stepping inside. "Still warm, don't argue." Elaine didn't. In the kitchen, Joyce pulled the loaf from the bag, a thick crusted rosemary round, her signature, and set it carefully on the wooden cutting board like a gift. "I swear," Joyce said, glancing around the kitchen, "this place looks cleaner every time I visit, even your spice rack's in alphabetical order." Elaine smiled. "I like knowing where things belong." Joyce leaned against the counter and sniffed the air. "Smells like comfort. What's the occasion?" Elaine stirred the pot once more. "No occasion, just peace." Joyce narrowed her eyes, then grinned. "That lunch must have really done something to you." Elaine didn't reply. Not directly. She only reached for the ladle and filled 2 small bowls. The old kitchen table was already set. They sat, side by side, the way they had through birthdays and grief, and long phone calls that needed company. Halfway through their second slice of bread, Elaine's phone buzzed from the counter. She didn't move. Joyce raised a brow. "Are we ignoring that?" "Depends who it is." Elaine stood and tapped the screen. Voicemail. From Sophie. She pressed play, and the voice came through, sugar-coated and sharp-edged. "Hey, Mom. I was thinking, we should redo the place when it's ours. Like, take out that wall between the dining room and kitchen, maybe put in French doors to the patio. It would open everything up. Oh, and floors. Definitely hardwood throughout. We can keep your teacups, though. You know, for display." Beep. End of message. Elaine didn't blink. She deleted it without comment. Joyce sipped her soup. "Display this," she muttered. Elaine chuckled softly and sat back down. She still thinks she's in line. "She's not." "No," Elaine said. "She's not." That afternoon, the mail arrived in its usual quiet clatter through the slot. Among the envelopes was one from Harvey. Thick, legal-sized, crisp. Elaine opened it at the kitchen table with a small paring knife. Inside were 2 copies of the finalized will, printed on heavy paper with embossed headers. Her name, clear and strong at the top. No mention of Sophie. Just the Grace Haven Women's Shelter. Harvey had attached a note in his familiar block handwriting. "Filed and sealed, certified copies enclosed. You are secure and clear." Elaine folded the documents and slid one into her desk drawer. The other she placed behind a framed photo of Harold, the 2 of them sitting on a picnic blanket in 1984, her hand resting on his knee. Outside, the sun began its slow descent over Beacon Hill, throwing gold across the rooftops. Elaine tied on her apron again and pulled a tray of biscotti dough from the fridge. Almond, her favorite. As she rolled each piece and shaped them, she began to hum. Nothing in particular, just a tune that matched the rhythm of her hands. She didn't think of Sophie. She didn't need to. The doorbell rang. Elaine brushed the flour from her palms and walked toward it. On the other side, under a courier's arm, was a large white envelope. Unmarked. Thick. She opened the door. The courier smiled. "Delivery for Ms. Elaine Porter." She took the envelope. It had weight. Sunday morning sunlight filtered through the lace curtains of Elaine's kitchen, casting delicate patterns across the floor like shadows from another time. The kettle whistled low on the stove, and a tray of butter cookies cooled by the window. Almond shortbread with a hint of cardamom. They were for no one in particular. Peace had become reason enough. She sat at the table, phone in hand, and opened Instagram. She didn't scroll often. Didn't need to. But curiosity had crept in like a draft under the door. At the top of the feed, Sophie Porter official. There she was. Red lipstick, perfect lighting, standing just outside Elaine's townhouse, chin tilted up like she was starring in a glossy real estate brochure. Sophie Porter, official, finalizing plans for our legacy renovation. Can't wait to breathe new life into this charming space. Hardwood floors, open kitchen, and maybe a library nook where Mom keeps her old tax books. Dream home honors her modern makeover. Nyesha Porter property. Elaine's finger hovered above the screen, not in anger, just in disbelief. Our renovation. Legacy. As if she were already gone. A moment later, her inbox chimed with a message, then another, and another. Cousin Emily. Is it true? Sophie said the place is hers? Aunt Margaret. So happy for you all? When's the housewarming? Niece Jenna. Sophie said you're moving into assisted living? Are you okay? Elaine took a breath, pressed her fingers gently to her temples. Then she typed a single reply. Elaine Porter. We'll see. Across the street, Joyce was unlocking the bakery. The front bell gave its usual chime, cheerful, oblivious, and within minutes, she was marching across the cobblestones with her sleeves rolled and her purse swinging. She didn't bother knocking. She never did. Tell me you saw it, Joyce said, stepping into the kitchen and pointing at Elaine's phone. The post, with the caption, and the hashtags. Elaine raised a brow. What exactly is a legacy renovation supposed to be? It's rich people code for erasing your mother with track lighting, Joyce muttered, grabbing a cookie from the tray. Honestly, it's hilarious. She has no idea she's lying to 36 relatives at once. Elaine poured tea for both of them, calm, precise. Let her brag. Joyce took a bite. You're not even a little tempted to correct her? Elaine sipped slowly. Why interrupt a performance that's already headed for disaster? Just then, a new email popped up on her laptop with the familiar subject line, from Harvey Klein. Subject, confirmation, all systems locked. Elaine, all estate documents remain recorded, certified, and legally uncontestable. The Women's Shelter has acknowledged receipt of designation paperwork. No loopholes exist. No further action is needed on your part unless you like to update again. Warmly, Harvey Elaine closed the email and smiled faintly. Joyce leaned forward. That from Harvey? Elaine nodded. He says everything's airtight. Joyce grinned. Of course it is. You've got Harvey and a heart of steel. Meanwhile, Sophie's got hashtags and hardwood fantasies. Elaine stood and placed a fresh tray of cookies into the oven. She adjusted the timer, wiped her hands, and walked to the window. Outside, her tulips were just beginning to break the soil. Small green shoots determined to bloom, regardless of what anyone above them assumed. Her phone buzzed again. Another Instagram post. Sophie holding up paint swatches, standing next to what looked like an architectural rendering of a fully gutted interior. Elaine didn't open it. She simply reached for her embroidery hoop, sat down in her favorite chair, and began stitching. Let Sophie paint her fiction. Elaine had chosen her frame and stitched every corner shut. Elaine was in the middle of folding tea towels when the front door creaked open. Not knocked, not rang, just opened. Sophie? She called, already knowing. Mom? Came the sing-song reply from the hall. Hope you don't mind. I had Mark unlock it. You really should get a smart lock. Elaine turned slowly, tea towel still in hand. Sophie breezed in wearing aviator sunglasses and a cashmere wrap that didn't belong to the season. Behind her came Mark, quiet as ever, clutching an insulated coffee cup like it might protect him from the tension he was about to walk into. Sophie dropped her purse on the bench near the door like she'd always lived there. I figured we'd stop by for a quick walk through. You know, our place could use some vision. Elaine blinked. I wasn't aware it had become plural. Sophie laughed. Come on, don't be old-fashioned. Elaine's gaze shifted to Mark, who gave a sheepish half-shrug. She just meant I meant, Sophie cut in, that I've been thinking. Maybe we knock out the wall between the den and the parlor? Open it up. Maybe a modern dining table here and, oh, that awful hutch has to go. She walked through the living room like a realtor staging a sale, touching things, moving them slightly. Her eyes skimmed over family photos, Harold's antique clock, the shelf of ledgers Elaine still kept for reasons of quiet comfort. Elaine followed them into the dining room where the morning light pooled soft across the table. Would you like tea? Sure, Mark said. I'm good, Sophie replied, tapping away on her phone. I just posted about the visit. Legacy tour. Sounds cute, right? Elaine said nothing. She poured the tea anyway, 3 cups, steady-handed, and set them on the table, each with a small saucer and 1 almond cookie. She'd chosen not to reply to Sophie's messages, but silence was not surrender. They all sat. Mark stirred his tea. Sophie scrolled. Elaine reached beneath the table and withdrew a thin navy folder. The paper inside was heavy, not just in weight, but in consequence. She laid it on the table, slowly, and flipped it open. Sophie glanced up. What's this? Elaine pushed it gently toward her. A copy of my will. The current version. Sophie laughed, but it cracked halfway out. Why are you showing me this? Elaine took a sip of tea. So there's no confusion. Sophie's fingers hesitated as they turned the pages. The grin that had been permanently fixed to her face for weeks faltered. Her mouth opened once, then closed. She looked to Mark, who leaned in to read. His expression shifted from curiosity to cold realization. You took me out? Sophie asked, her voice suddenly sharp. Elaine didn't flinch. I updated the will. You're no longer listed as a beneficiary. The estate is going to the Gracehaven Women's Shelter. You! Sophie's voice caught. You can't be serious? After everything I've done for you? Elaine raised one eyebrow. What, specifically, would that be? Sophie flushed. I'm your daughter. That doesn't mean you inherit me. The silence that followed was thick enough to stir with a spoon. Mark looked like he wanted to disappear into his cup. This is insane, Sophie said. We were just talking about plans, about renovations. No, Elaine said softly. You were talking, I was listening, and I've listened long enough. Sophie stood abruptly, the chair legs scraping against the floor. You've lost it. This isn't final. Elaine folded the folder shut with one smooth motion. It's notarized, certified, filed with the court. You can ask Harvey if you like. Sophie's face had gone pale. You'll regret this. Elaine stood as well. No, I've already regretted waiting this long. Mark rose hesitantly, not meeting Elaine's eyes. Sophie grabbed her purse without a word and stormed out, the front door slamming hard enough to rattle the hallway mirror. Mark followed quietly. Elaine remained standing at the table for a long moment, one hand on the back of the chair. Then she reached for her tea, lifted it to her lips, and took a slow, measured sip, the steam curling gently upward, just like she liked it. Rain glazed the cobblestones outside Elaine's townhouse the next afternoon, turning Beacon Hill into a painting of gray slate and slick reflections. Inside, the house smelled of lemon oil and rising bread. Elaine stood in the parlor folding a dishcloth when she heard it, the door swinging open again, fast and hard. Mom! Sophie's voice cracked through the hallway like a thrown glass. You can't do this! Elaine set the cloth down and walked into the dining room. Sophie was already there, dripping from the rain, cheeks flushed, eyes flashing. Mark trailed behind her, pale and silent, like a man who'd just realized the road beneath him had crumbled. You can't just rewrite everything, Sophie shouted. I'm your daughter. This is my future. Elaine moved to the sideboard, calm as ever. Your future is yours to build. This house isn't part of it. Sophie slammed her palm down on the dining table. You've lost your mind. After everything Mark and I have planned. Planned with what? Elaine asked, her voice soft but sharp. You planned renovations for a house you don't own. Planned a lifestyle you haven't earned. Mark shifted, rainwater dripping from his coat onto the polished floor. Sophie, maybe we should. Don't you dare take her side, Sophie hissed, spinning on him. You said she couldn't do this. Elaine reached for the navy folder she'd left on the sideboard. With the same deliberate care she used when balancing a ledger, she opened it and laid the stamped documents across the table. Here, she said. Look for yourself. Sophie snatched one up. The paper was heavy, embossed, black ink crisp and final. Filed with the Suffolk County Clerk's Office. Beneficiary, Grace Haven Women's Shelter. The notary seal gleamed under the chandelier's light. Every page initialed, every line locked. You think some stamp scares me? Sophie spat. You think this can't be undone? Elaine pointed with one finger to the paragraph at the bottom of the page. Contest it, and you trigger the forfeiture clause. You won't even be eligible for the minor accounts I left in your name for emergencies. Mark's lips parted, but no sound came. He looked at the clause himself, eyes scanning the lines as though hoping the letters would rearrange into something softer. They didn't. At that moment, the front door opened again, but this time it was Joyce. She leaned casually in the doorway, apron still dusted with flour, umbrella dripping onto the rug. Did I miss the fireworks? She asked, eyes glinting. Sophie whipped around. What are you doing here? Delivering scones, Joyce said, holding up a paper bag with a smirk. And watching a free legal seminar, apparently. You think this is funny? Sophie demanded. I think it's overdue, Joyce replied. And I think you should read the fine print before you pick out paint colors. Elaine didn't look at Joyce. She kept her eyes on Sophie, steady and unblinking. Try contesting, she said evenly. See where it gets you. Sophie's face twisted. You're cruel, she said. You're punishing me. No, Elaine said. I'm protecting myself. For a heartbeat, the only sound was rain against the window and Mark's uneven breathing. Sophie clutched the papers like they might disintegrate in her hands. Then she slammed them back down onto the table. This isn't over, she hissed, grabbing her purse. Mark didn't move. Sophie, he started. Don't, she snapped. Let's go. She stormed out, heels striking the hardwood like hammer blows, the door banging behind her. Mark followed, slower, his face pale and unreadable. Joyce stepped into the dining room and set the scone bag on the table next to the papers. You okay? Elaine sat down, smoothing the folder closed. I'm fine. But as she looked at the papers, her brow furrowed slightly. The call came on a Tuesday morning, just as Elaine was settling into her favorite chair by the window, knitting needles in hand and a half-finished scarf pooling in her lap like warm river stones. Harvey Klein, the voice announced when she picked up. Elaine didn't ask how he was. Did she file? There was a pause, then the calm rustle of papers. She didn't. Elaine allowed herself one slow breath. Not relief, exactly. Just confirmation. Harvey continued. Her lawyer, if we can call him that, sent a letter full of vague noise, words like undue influence, elder manipulation, and implied promises. Nothing real. No case number. No filing. Elaine's voice stayed even. So they're bluffing. Oh, they're playing poker with an empty hand. I replied with the will, the notarized video, and Marion's time-stamped stamp. Radio silence since. Elaine smiled faintly. She thought paper could scare me. She thought legacy came by default, Harvey said, but she forgot who balanced the books all those years. Elaine chuckled. Thank you, Harvey. No trouble, I'll keep you updated. But for now, airtight. She hung up and returned to her knitting. The scarf was sky blue, not for anyone in particular. It just reminded her of summer mornings before Sophie had learned to speak with such sharpness. Outside, the light rain tapped against the window, soft and harmless. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a notification. Instagram. Sophie Porter official has posted a new story. A black background. White text. When people betray you for their own control, don't worry. Karma keeps receipts. Family is just DNA. Shakshich watch this space. Elaine sighed. 2 minutes later, another post. This one. A photo of Sophie holding a coffee mug captioned, "One day, the truth will come out. Until then, I'll sip." Elaine sipped her own tea and rolled another row of stitches. By noon, her cousin Doris had texted, "Do I even want to ask what Sophie's on about?" Elaine replied, with her usual clarity, "We'll see." That afternoon, Joyce arrived with a tin of cocoa biscotti and 3 new jokes. "She's back at it again," Joyce said, flopping into the armchair and shaking out her umbrella. "Posted a quote from The Godfather and tagged it me soon." Elaine snorted. "Did she say which character she's supposed to be?" "Whichever one gets a kitchen island, probably." Joyce pulled a biscotti from the tin and examined it. "So what's the legal front say?" Elaine handed her the phone. "Harvey's email came this morning." Joyce skimmed it, then read aloud. "Elaine, no filing, no threat. The trust and will are legally uncontestable. You're protected. Enjoy your week. Harvey." She grinned. "I like him. He writes like he invoices by the word." "He does," Elaine replied. "That's why I trust him." They sat in the living room, the afternoon sliding by in soft rain and laughter, cookies shared and stories told. Outside, the street had quieted, Beacon Hill settling into its usual rhythm of umbrellas and delivery vans. Joyce bit into her biscotti. "Want me to reply to Sophie's next post with the shelter's donation link?" Elaine didn't look up from her knitting. "No. Let her pretend." "Suit yourself," Joyce muttered. "But if she keeps quoting mob movies, I might post your trust documents with a horse emoji." Elaine smiled. She didn't say it aloud, but she'd already thought about it. How quietly Sophie's bluff had folded, how loudly she'd continue to scream into digital voids, how Mark hadn't even bothered to reach out. The doorbell rang. Elaine looked up. On the front step stood a delivery courier in a blue jacket, holding a small box and a thick envelope. She walked to the door, heart not racing. Just curious now. The courier smiled. "Ms. Porter? Documents and parcel. From Harvey Klein's office." Elaine took them, thanked him, and stepped back inside. On top of the box was a yellow sticky note in Harvey's familiar block print. "Just in case she tries again, you're still 10 moves ahead." Inside the envelope, certified court copies. Inside the box, a gift-wrapped tin, labeled "Emergency Biscotti, for when silence is louder than lawsuits." Elaine laughed. Loudly this time. Then set the box down, returned to her chair, and picked up her needles. Outside, the rain finally stopped. It started with a text. "We'll be there in 20. Don't bother tidying up. We'll make it ours soon enough. S." Elaine read it twice, then turned off her phone and placed it face down on the side table beside her embroidery hoop. She did not tidy. She did not wait. She simply rose from her chair and moved to the front hallway, adjusting the hem of her cardigan like armor. Outside, the late morning sun sharpened the shadows across Beacon Hill's cobblestones. A few brown leaves skittered past the stoop. 2 townhouses down, Mrs. Langston paused her dog-walking route, eyes flicking toward Elaine's door with practiced curiosity. The car arrived exactly 21 minutes later. A silver crossover SUV too large for the street, its tires crunching gently against the curb. Sophie emerged first, in oversized sunglasses and a trench coat too crisp for the season. Mark followed with 2 boxes stacked and unlabeled, a duffel bag slung over one shoulder. Elaine opened the door before they could knock. Sophie grinned. Well, look who's waiting to welcome us. Elaine didn't move from the threshold. What are you doing here? Sophie breezed past the question, stepping forward. Just bringing a few things for the transition. It's time, don't you think? Elaine didn't flinch. No. Sophie's eyes narrowed. I don't need your permission, Mom. This is still my future home. Elaine's voice was calm, clipped. It isn't your home. Behind Sophie, Mark hovered uncomfortably with the boxes. Maybe we should... No, Sophie snapped. She's bluffing. She's always bluffing. From across the street, a neighbor peeked through her curtain. A passing jogger slowed to watch. Elaine stood firm in the doorway, one hand gripping the edge of the frame. You're not moving in. You can't stop me. Sophie stepped closer, eyes locked on Elaine's like a challenge. Elaine didn't raise her voice. Yes, I can. Behind her, the front hallway glowed in soft light. Framed photos of Harold lined the wall. A vase of fresh tulips sat on the entry table, their stems tall and unbothered. Call someone, Sophie muttered to Mark. She's trespassing on our property. At that moment, another door opened. Joyce, from next door, holding a coffee mug and her phone in the same hand. Everything all right here? She called out, clearly already filming. Sophie turned. Oh, what? Are you part of the neighborhood watch now? No, Joyce said with a grin. Just making sure no one's squatting in someone else's house. Smile, sweetheart. This is public sidewalk. Elaine stepped slightly forward. You can drop the act, Sophie. Everyone knows. Mark put the boxes down. I don't think we should push this. Sophie spun on him. She's bluffing, Mark? She's holding the deed, he said quietly. As if summoned, the police cruiser turned the corner, its tires slow and unhurried. The officer stepped out, a young man with sharp eyes and the calm of someone who'd seen worse standoffs. Afternoon, he said. We received a call about a potential dispute regarding residence. Elaine spoke first. I'm the legal owner of this home. These individuals were not invited. Sophie stepped forward. She's my mother. This is supposed to be my inheritance. The officer looked from Sophie to Elaine. Ma'am, do you have proof of ownership? Elaine walked to the hallway table, retrieved the folder she'd prepared hours earlier, just in case. She handed over the stamped deed and notarized documents, filed with the clerk's office, witnessed and sealed. The officer reviewed the documents, flipping through with slow precision. After a beat, he looked up. This is all in order. He turned to Sophie. I'm going to have to ask you to leave the property. Voluntarily. Or we'll proceed formally. Sophie's mouth opened, but no sound came. You can't be serious, she finally whispered. Elaine just watched her, still calm, still at the door. Mark retrieved the boxes without a word. Joyce gave a tiny wave from the sidewalk. You want me to email you the video? It's got good lighting. Sophie turned away, jaw clenched, heels clacking as she stalked back to the SUV. Mark followed, not even looking back. The officer gave Elaine a polite nod. Call us again if anything escalates. Elaine nodded. Thank you, officer. He left. So did the SUV. Only then did Elaine step out onto her own front porch. The air smelled like fresh bread and spring. Joyce walked over, still sipping her coffee. That was satisfying. Elaine smiled. And quiet. She turned to go inside, but paused at the door. A folded piece of paper lay on the doormat. No envelope, no name. Just one line in bold, shaky handwriting. This isn't the end. Elaine picked it up, read it once, then folded it again and slipped it into the trash. The next morning broke clear and cold over Boston. Elaine woke before the sun, the echo of Sophie's note still sitting somewhere in the back of her mind like a splinter she refused to touch. By 8, She dressed in her navy wool coat and a slate blue scarf, and was walking briskly down Charles Street toward Back Bay, each step clicking against the cobblestones with a deliberate rhythm. Harvey's office occupied the 12th floor of a building that smelled faintly of cedar and old paper. When she stepped off the elevator, his receptionist didn't even ask for a name. "He's ready for you, Miss Porter," she said. Harvey stood by the window when Elaine entered, hands clasped behind his back. Outside, the skyline glimmered, glass and brick and history stacked together. He turned, expression both professional and paternal. "I had a feeling I'd see you sooner rather than later." "I'm done letting her think this is temporary," Elaine said, settling into the leather chair across from his desk. She opened her bag and pulled out the thick navy folder she'd been carrying for weeks. "I want this final." Harvey sat, glasses perched low on his nose as he flipped through the existing will. "You've already removed her from the house, the accounts, the trust. What's left?" "Everything else," Elaine said quietly. "Any residuals? Any claws she could twist? Gone." Harvey nodded slowly. "You want the shelter listed as sole beneficiary?" "All of it," she replied. "Grace Haven saved me once, Harvey. They don't even know it. I want them to know it now." He gave a small smile. "Then we'll do it right." As he drafted the codicil, the steady scratch of his pen against paper filled the room. Elaine sat still, hands folded in her lap, not anxious, but resolute. Through the glass wall behind Harvey's desk, she could see the city rolling by. Delivery trucks, women in coats, a man walking his dog. People moving, building their own futures. The door clicked open. Joyce slipped inside, cheeks flushed from the cold, a small paper bag in one hand. "Brought muffins," she whispered, closing the door behind her. "And moral support." Harvey chuckled. "You're right on time, Ms. Adams. We'll need you to witness anyway." Joyce set the bag on the side table and plopped into the chair next to Elaine. "Ready to hammer the last nail?" she asked. Elaine gave a soft laugh. "More like planting the last seed." Harvey turned the pages toward her. "This makes the Grace Haven Women's Shelter the sole heir. No fallback, no reversion clauses, no conditional releases. You're sure?" "I'm certain," she said. He handed her the pen. Elaine took a breath, then signed. A slow, deliberate signature that looped and underlined itself like a final stroke on a finished ledger. Harvey slid the paper to Joyce. "And your witness signature here." Joyce uncapped the pen and signed with a flourish. "Done. She's free." Harvey stood, gathering the documents into a folder stamped in gold. "I'll file this with the county clerk personally before noon. Marion's already been briefed. You'll have certified copies in a week." Elaine rose, smoothing her coat, feeling something uncoil inside her chest. Not joy, not relief, but a kind of clean space she hadn't known she needed. "Thank you," she said. Harvey extended his hand. "This was you, Elaine. I just filled in the blanks." Joyce grinned. "Come on, let's get you some coffee and a victory muffin." They stepped out into the hall. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, catching in Elaine's silver hair, warming the edge of her coat. For the first time in months, she felt light enough to float. The elevator chimed. As the doors opened, a man in a navy suit stepped out, holding a slim briefcase. He brushed past them without a glance, but Elaine caught the embossed initials on the leather, MP Mark Porter. He didn't look up, didn't say a word. Just walked straight toward Harvey's office, his jaw set. Elaine and Joyce exchanged a look as the elevator doors closed. "What's he doing here?" Joyce murmured. Elaine adjusted the strap of her bag. "Finding out he's late." The elevator descended, carrying them down as somewhere above, Mark knocked on a door that no longer had space for him. The knock came just after breakfast. Elaine was rinsing her teacup in the sink when she heard it. Polite, 2 short taps, followed by a pause. "Not Sophie?" Sophie would have rung the bell like a warning. When she opened the door, Mark stood there, holding his hat in both hands like a schoolboy about to confess. His coat was wrinkled, his eyes hollow. "Can I come in?" Elaine studied him for a breath, then stepped aside. "Kitchen." He followed her in and sat stiffly at the small round table while she refilled the kettle. The silence stretched. "She moved out," he said finally. "Last night." Elaine didn't turn around. "Where to?" "A friend's place in Cambridge. Someone she met at a wellness retreat." Elaine allowed herself the faintest sigh. "That sounds about right." Mark looked at the scarred tabletop. "She said she needed space, time to reset. Whatever that means." Elaine poured 2 cups of tea. "It means she's not done pretending the world owes her something." Mark didn't argue. He just took the tea with both hands. "I didn't come to defend her. I just thought you should know." "I already did," Elaine said, sitting. "You just confirmed it." For a moment they sat in silence, steam curling up between them. "She was furious," he said, quietly. "Said you betrayed her? Said everything was stolen from her." Elaine met his eyes. Steady. "Nothing was stolen. She never earned what she assumed was hers." Mark gave a sad little nod. "She never saw it coming. She never looked." By afternoon, the calls had started. A cousin in Vermont, a niece from Philadelphia, then 2 voicemails from Aunt Margaret, each more incredulous than the last. "Sophie moved in with strangers? Is it true she's out of the will?" "Elaine, what on earth is going on?" Elaine replied to none of them. The gossip rippled like spilled wine at a wedding, impossible to clean up, but oddly satisfying to watch. The next morning, Joyce pulled her into the bakery's back kitchen with the excitement of someone holding a winning lottery ticket. "You're going to love this," she said, placing 2 espresso cups on the prep counter and sliding a small pink envelope across to Elaine. Elaine opened it. Inside was a letter on thick paper, signed in ink by the executive director of Grace Haven. "Dear Ms. Porter, your gift came at a time when 3 families were facing shelter closures. Because of your generosity, their doors will stay open this winter." One mother cried when we told her. Another said, "Tell that woman she gave me back my breath. Thank you for rewriting lives. We'll never forget it." Beneath the letter was a photo. 3 women standing on the steps of the shelter, arms around their children, all smiling despite the chill. Elaine didn't speak. She just ran her hand over the image, as if trying to feel the warmth those smiles gave off. Joyce raised her coffee. "To the life you saved," she said, "and the one you let go." Elaine clinked her cup lightly against hers. To breath. Later that week, the weather turned. Brighter skies, softer wind. Elaine spent the afternoon in the front garden with a trowel and a packet of tulip bulbs. The soil was still cool, but loose enough. She worked slowly, knees creaking, gloves smudged with earth. Each bulb was placed gently, red, yellow, pink. A riot of spring just waiting for permission. "You really think they'll come up?" Joyce asked, watching from the steps. Elaine looked over her shoulder. "Everything blooms eventually." And then, just as she wiped her hands and stood, a quiet sound came from the end of the walkway. A car. A familiar one. Elaine straightened as the silver SUV rolled past without slowing. Sophie was in the passenger seat. She didn't look out the window, but the driver did. A woman Elaine didn't recognize. Younger. Sunglasses. Laughing at something Sophie said. Elaine didn't wave. She didn't blink. She just stood there, tulip bulbs at her feet, her garden in order. Joyce came down the steps and handed her a mug of tea. "You okay?" Elaine took a sip. "She looked like a guest in someone else's life," she said. "Not mine." Joyce nodded. "And you?" Elaine turned back to the garden. "I'm finally home." And from inside the house, the mail slot clicked. A new envelope. Thick. Gold seal. Return address. Grace Haven Legal Office. Elaine didn't move. She just smiled. The news reached Elaine on a Monday. Not from Mark. Not from Sophie. From Joyce, holding a newspaper and a bag of still warm muffins like it was any other morning. "You might want to sit," she said, already kicking off her shoes in the entryway. "Or stand, depending on how you like your poetic justice." Elaine raised a brow. "Joyce." Joyce dropped the paper on the kitchen table. "Page 6, business section, bottom corner." Elaine slipped on her glasses and scanned the page. It took a second. Local influencer files for bankruptcy, luxury spending, loan defaults cited. Below it, a grainy image of Sophie, hair tousled, jaw set, walking quickly toward a courthouse exit. The caption listed her name in full: Sophie Elaine Porter. Elaine sat down without a word. Joyce slid the muffins closer. "Almond poppy, for irony." Elaine read the article in silence. Maxed out credit lines. Evicted from a subleased unit in Cambridge. Failed wellness brand investment. A whisper of influencer fraud that hadn't landed. Yet. "She blamed you," Joyce said softly, pouring tea. "Said you cut her off with no warning." "I gave her years of warnings," Elaine murmured. "She just thought I wouldn't follow through." Joyce leaned back. "Well, the universe just did." Elaine took a bite of muffin. It was warm, soft, slightly sweet. She hummed quietly, the tune light and tuneless as she reached for a napkin. Later that day, she dusted the living room with unhurried care. The windows were open, letting in the crisp breath of late spring. The wood polish smelled faintly of oranges, and each surface gleamed like glass under her hand. On the sideboard, next to the Grace Haven letter, sat a newsletter folded neatly in thirds. Grace Haven Shelter Quarterly. "Because of you, we stayed open." Inside, a short column titled Legacy in Action outlined Elaine's contribution. "One donor's kindness helped us house 12 women and 9 children this quarter. We don't always get to say thank you in person, but we feel your name in every story we share." Elaine placed the newsletter beside the framed photo of Harold again. His smile in that picture, crooked and amused, always felt like approval. That evening, Harvey called. "No movement on her end," he said. "No new counsel, no appeals." Elaine nodded, though he couldn't see her. "She's too proud to ask, too angry to let go. She'll figure out eventually that you were the one thing holding her together." "She always had both hands free," Elaine said, sitting at her writing desk. "She just used them to take, not build." Harvey paused. "The trust remains untouched. The shelter's claim is secure. You're still protected." Elaine smiled faintly. "Airtight." "You know," Harvey added, "you could add a clause for future grants, build a legacy fund. Your name would last longer than hers ever will." Elaine considered. "Let's talk about that next week." After she hung up, she lit a small candle by the window. Not for grief, not for Sophie, just for light. A breeze caught the flame and made it dance. The next morning, Mark appeared again. Not on the doorstep, but in the neighborhood. Elaine spotted him outside the cafe on the corner, sleeves rolled, talking to a contractor. A clipboard in hand. No Sophie in sight. He didn't wave, but when he noticed her watching, he gave a small, respectful nod. Like someone who'd finally learned what consequences look like. Elaine returned it with a calm blink and kept walking. At home, she checked the mail. 2 envelopes. One was an updated report from Grace Haven's accountant, confirming the shelter had received the second disbursement. The other had no return address. She opened it in the kitchen with a paring knife, careful and quiet. Inside, a single sheet of expensive stationery. No salutation, no sign-off. Just one line, handwritten in silver ink. You'll choke on what you kept. Elaine read it once, then folded it sharply in half, dropped it into the compost bin, and returned to her oven. The shortbread cookies were ready to come out. She slid the tray onto the counter, humming softly as she dusted them with powdered sugar. Outside, the tulips had started to bloom. She didn't check the window. She didn't need to. The maitre d' recognized her before she even stepped through the door. "Ms. Porter," he said warmly, opening the heavy wood-paneled entrance of Trattoria Amore. "Welcome back." The air was familiar. Lemon oil, old wood, a whisper of garlic and rosemary. Sunlight streamed through the tall front windows, and the crystal chandeliers glowed even in daylight. Elaine wore navy, as she always did. Clean lines, quiet pride. Her silver hair was pinned back, and she held a small clutch under one arm like it was armor. "Window table?" the maitre d' offered. She nodded. He led her to the same table, the one near the fountain sculpture, where shadows danced along the marble floor. The same spot where Sophie had once performed a scene for strangers and Instagram followers alike. Today, it was just a quiet table with linen napkins and a small candle lit too early. Elaine sat. A young waiter approached. Not the same one from that first dinner, but clearly trained in the same precision. "Would you like to see the menu, Ms. Porter?" "I know what I want." He smiled. "Tortellini al limone?" Elaine smiled back. "And the Pinot, please." He returned moments later with the wine and poured her a glass with careful grace. A second chair scraped back across from her. "You always beat me here," Joyce said, pulling off her scarf. No, some people are late on purpose. Builds mystique." Elaine raised her glass. "You've never been mysterious, just dramatic." Joyce laughed. "Fair." They clinked glasses gently. "I heard the news," Joyce said, leaning in. Grace Haven unveiled the plaque. Elaine nodded. "I didn't go." Joyce tilted her head. "Why not?" "I didn't want a ceremony. I wanted beds made, fridges filled, doors unlocked." Joyce exhaled through her nose, a smile without words. "But," Elaine added, "they sent a photo." She reached into her clutch and slid a print across the table. A bronze plaque mounted above the shelter's main entrance. It read, "The Elaine Porter Fund for Renewal, in honor of lives rebuilt with quiet strength." Joyce blinked hard. "That's beautiful." "It's enough," Elaine said. "Finally." They ordered lunch. They laughed. They split a tiramisu and argued over who got the last bite, just like old times. As the plates were cleared, the same waiter approached with the leather folio. "Ready for the check?" he asked. Elaine nodded. "Yes, thank you." He placed it gently beside her. No ceremony, no mistake, no name misattributed. Just one bill, handed to the woman who owned the moment. Elaine opened her wallet, removed her card, and tucked it inside the folio. Joyce leaned back, arms crossed, grinning. "Feels different, doesn't it?" Elaine looked out the window at the cobblestones glinting in the afternoon light. "Feels earned." The waiter returned, handed her the receipt, and with a small bow said, "Thank you, Miss Porter. It's a pleasure to have you back." She signed her name, steady, unhurried, then placed her pen neatly on the tablecloth. They stood, coats draped over their arms, the sun catching the silver in Elaine's hair. As they made their way toward the door, Joyce asked, "Do you ever think about the first time we were here?" Elaine paused at the threshold, just long enough to glance over her shoulder at the table where Sophie had once laughed, loud enough to try and rewrite a room. "She said I was penniless," Elaine murmured. Joyce waited. Elaine's smile was soft, the kind that held years behind it. "So I left her the bill instead." Then she pushed open the door and walked back into the light.